Hey guys, welcome back. This is AWS Fundamentals by Divikran Ravela, and we're going to discuss more about the bit about AWS and how it's what are its fundamentals. So basically, today we're going to talk about a bit of about the cloud computing deployment models. So basically, there are two types of deployment models. This one is all-in cloud-based deployment, where you deploy all your components into the cloud, like EC2 instances, all your database services, and any of the other services that you have. Like everything is living in the cloud environment, and you all you do is you access them via the different means to communicate with them with the AWS. So, like for example, this management console, there is a command line approach. There are different ways to approach it, and the other one is a hybrid deployment. Hybrid deployment is more of like it's a common approach by many enterprises, and this is the most preferred way by the current trend is to have the few of their on-premises resources. The reason being, like, there could be some security things that they want. The enterprises want them to be on premises, and then the rest will go into the cloud. So anything non-important one will go into the cloud, and anything more important and more secure, maybe in this case the credit card information or something, things like those ones, like could stay on premises, for example. So there are two types: all-in and hybrid deployment. And coming to the global infrastructure, how they are keeping the prices low, that's one of the things. So the one of the good things about the AWS is, like, it has over 1 million active customers in more than 190 countries, so which is giving them the opportunity to give them to achieve the lower latency and higher throughputs for their business needs. So that's giving that's a good thing. So high availability is via the multiple locations worldwide, and AWS provides the high availability technology infrastructure platform with multiple locations worldwide. These locations are composed of regions and availability zones. So coming to the regions, region is something that you have it in a country, for example. Like normally, you can AWS selects a few hotspots throughout the world. So, for example, there's one in Sydney in Australia, and the regions, and there's one in Singapore, and few in US and UK, and few European countries. So they, depending upon the customer demand, that they have created a few regions, like this one in Mumbai as well. So each region can have the multiple availability zones, at least two of them. So the reason being is, one availability zone will not serve the purpose and the ideology of a cloud services. So if there are two, then they can actually replicate one services to the other in case of the any emergency, or any power failure, or any natural calamity happens. Then there is another availability zone which could work as a standback, a fallback for the cloud services. And even the other one is up, and they copy back the whole thing to the availability, to the new availability zone. So that's the reason. Like there could be more than one regions in each country, and not in each country, in a specific region, and there could be at least two availability zones in each region. And the placement of resource and data is in multiple locations is a good practice that the AWS always recommends the customers to have their copies of their resources and data in multiple regions. So for example, there's a region and their availability, so you can always replicate them within the availability zones. But at the moment, unless and then the user opts to replicate the whole resources to a different region, by default it's not replicated unless you opt for it. So that's one thing that you need to look after. And regions are actually isolated from other regions, so they're completely independent. So any data replication has to be opted for. Okay, this way it helps us them to have greater tolerance and stability. And as availability zones itself are isolated, but they are connected to the each region, not each region, the specific associated region. And availability zones are separated within the metropolitan region. So basically, for example, there's one in Mumbai, it's one region, and they have multiple availability zones, and it gives them the opportunity to replicate data into multiple availability zones. And availability zones are quite far from each other, and they are strategically planned so that it has low risk floodplains, and the each data availability zone is safe from its own, and even the power backups and everything are taken care by AWS. So they have their own private networks, and also they on any generators or anything that they all have the backups. So they'll make sure that it's always up and running. That's about the global infrastructure of the AWS. So one of the tips for global infrastructure is then the customer that the AWS recommends its customers is the high availability can be achieved by deploying your application across multiple zones. That's the key factor. An instance of each tier of an application should be placed in a distant availability zones. Okay, independent copy of each application stack in two or more availability zones. That's really important. And coming to the security, it is the topmost priority for AWS, Amazon Web Services. So they are very serious about its security, and they have taken all the measures so that it's always secure, and they're very good at it. And so that the organization can leverage all its AWS policies and architectures and operational processes that it has, and which is much better than the running their own data center. Infrastructure is built and managed by security's best practices and standards, which is really good. So they have the topmost policies and best practices and standards, so the end user can leverage them. So AWS uses redundant and layered control and continuous validation and testing. It keeps doing all this continuous validation and testing, so that it's free from any security issues that it might come in the future. So it's monitored and protected 24/7. So end users can rest assured about their security. And coming to the compliance, like compliance and is that both AWS and customers are responsible for managing their own IT environment. So customers have to manage their own IT environment, and they have to make sure that they are doing the right thing while using the AWS services, and they have to maintain the adequate governance over their IT infrastructure. So they have to make sure that the right people uses it and nobody misuses the infrastructure that they have created in the AWS. So they have to be responsible for what they are doing. So organizations maintain a complete control and ownership in the region. Okay, so and allows them to meet regional compliance and data residency requirements. So locally they will be liable for what they have and their requirements. And coming to the AWS compiles with few of the standards that they practice. There one few of them are like SOC 1, 2, and 3. The Service Organization Control ISAE, International Standard on Assurance Engagement 3402, and FISMA, Federal Information Security Management Act, and the DIACAP, Department of Defense Information Assurance Certification and Accreditation Process. FedRAMP, Federal Risk and Authorization Management Program, PCI DSS Level 1, it's a payment card industry data security standard. So there's an ISO 9001, ISO 27001, ISO 271. This is International Organization for Standardization. So these are a few of the components. There are a few more, but these are the few of them that the AWS compiles with. And we also have the AWS cloud computing platform. Like what are they? What are in a nutshell? Like they are like enterprise applications. They have the virtual desktops and sharing and collaboration. So we can share and collaborate with the other services. And with this platform services, there are databases, and within the databases, it supports the relational NoSQL and caching databases. And with the coming to analytics, it supports the Hadoop real-time data warehouse and data workflow, app services like queuing, orchestration, app streaming, transcoding, email, and even search. And coming to deployment, it's containers, DevOps tools, resource templates, usage tracking, monitoring, and logs. Okay, mobile services, identity sync, mobile analytics, and notification. And coming to the compute, there are VMs, virtual machines, and auto scaling and the load balancing part of it, which you need to compute as well. And the storage are more of like objects, blocks, and archiving. And there's a security and access control as well, and networking as well. So it's a few things that it looks into. And coming to the infrastructure, there are regions, availability zones, and content delivery networks and points of presence. So there are a few that you look. So we'll be looking into all these things in detail in the next videos, and wait for that. And after that, we have the how do we access the platforms. There are three ways to access it basically. So you can access it via the AWS management console, web application for the manage AWS cloud services. So it's a web application, and it has every services that AWS provides. It's now solved in the website, and they can easily access and create any the fancy UI that they have, and you do all your tasks that you need. And it also shows you the accounts and billing for you. And there's a AWS command line CLI, so it pretty much does the same, but it's in a CLI, and controls multiple services from a command line. And there's a software development kit from AWS, and API interact with the web services. So they have given this API endpoints where we can use via the web service. We can make use of them. So support many different programming languages and platforms, obviously. And thanks for listening. Have a good day.